We're making a philosophy current tier list. Philosophy literally means the love of wisdom from its meaning in Greek. Philosophy studies 4 branches, which are ethics, logic, metaphysics, and epistemology. In this case, we're only going to be ranking the ethics ones, since otherwise it will be like an hour-long video. So we'll be uploading this first part, and then we'll be uploading the metaphysics parts, and then the epistemology part. We won't be diving into logic, since it's pretty much just like how to study. So there's not really a correct way to rank them, so we're not going to be diving into those. So for the ranking, we'll be ranking it according to their practicality, usefulness, and soundness. And also how much we agree with them. And of course, this is our opinion. We'll be more than happy to fight you in the comments. We really do need the engagement, so feel free to leave your rants or mention any currents that we didn't include or whatever. We'll briefly explain each of them, and since we will assume that you have a general knowledge of them, and if you really wanted to know more about each current, you can definitely Google them, or feel free to check out the links that are in the description below. And I think that's it, so let's get right into it.
So, utilitarianism in general is just a framework that states that moral action is the one that maximizes utility for people, including in the long run. It's likely the most known consequentialist theory, with early versions arising since ancient times. But even if it sounds simple, guiding our actions through a utilitarian lens is kind of hard. It requires a lot of effort and thought. And on itself, it isn't universally right, because there are many different ways to calculate utility. Plus, there are other divisions of utilitarianism, like act versus rule utilitarianism. And either way, I believe it feels like a very cold way to decide morality, and when I think it should mostly be a human thing, like something that's a bit more intuitive. However, I think when done appropriately, it's quite useful for making bigger decisions that affect more people. So, making laws and things like that seems like a good use of utilitarianism, but maybe not for each individual action we take. So, while considering all of these, I'd give utilitarianism something like a B. I think seems fair.
Okay, so I think a B is pretty fitting for this one, since it's a pretty basic one. You may have heard of the trolley problem, and obviously the trolley problem on itself is kind of a misrepresentation of utilitarianism, since it's like, oh well, somebody has to suffer, right? But if we take it into a more like general context, it can be like, oh, what if we're disagreeing over what to have for dinner, and I'm like, oh, I really want pizza, and you're like, oh no, I really want, I don't know, like boneless wings or something. So we just settle for something that brings happiness to both of us, and we're just like, oh yeah, we can just have tacos, for example, or something. But yeah, that's what I mean. I guess it makes sense like in a more broad context, and even it made sense in the context of 2 people. So imagine it in like a context of like thousands of people over like, I don't know where our taxes should go, or whether we should get free lunches on school or that kind of stuff. I guess utilitarianism does make sense in those kind of senses, but it's really inefficient to make it, as you said, like in every individual action.
I think in general it's just like consider that your actions are not just done at this point, but rather many people might guide themselves because of how you act. And yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I agree it deserves a B tier, so we're gonna place it at B and post editing. Woohoo, post editing. So next up, we have Kantianism. And as a stark opposition to utilitarianism, Kantianism argues that morality is universal and derived from rationality. It states that human dignity must be preserved at all costs, and morality is about doing so. Kantianism further defines a truly good action as different from morality, as it is hard to encounter one, as it must correctly align from 3 proposed dualisms: duty versus inclination, which is morality; autonomy versus heteronomy, which is freedom; and categorical versus hypothetical, which is reason. Basically, it says that for an action to be good, we must be inclined to do it, we must do it out of our free will, and we must do it for itself, not for a future benefit.
Okay. I think that the belief that morality is universal is interesting, which is one of the proposals of Kant, and it's definitely applicable to some extent because universal rights literally arose from the framework of Kant's philosophy, and it feels more natural, or at least action-wise, than utilitarianism, because even if it requires thought to guide action, it does not require. I think most Kantians don't really think about, oh, I need to fit on all these dualisms when they try to act, because you kind of have a proxy already when you act, like you know whether you did it from free will or not, or whether you did it out of duty, or out of your own desire to good. So yeah, I think though that not all rules apply universally, which is why there are so many different legislations and why disagreements exist in these. So even if the point of guiding action is to make it universal, it's not necessarily true, though it is applicable to some extent. So because of that, I will give Kantianism something like A tier, because to me it does make sense, and universality, it's an interesting position, but it's not completely true always.
Yeah, like as you said, it's pretty much just a based utilitarianism, as in pretty much crumbles the trolley problem, as it's like, well, you're forced to make a decision, so you're not really, so it doesn't really count as a good, really good moral decision, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it deserves an A tier spot. Yeah.
For Stoics, logic goes above all. So to achieve a happy life, a life worth living, it requires logical thought. So this means that you should practice internal reasoning and that you need arguments and the ability to differentiate between truth and falsehood. So Stoics also practice emotional self-control and a calm problem solving to focus to life. And they believe that passions and insecurities are misguided actions that should be controlled with discipline. So, which is what most alpha males on TikTok teach anyways.
Okay, completely ignoring the whole baloney of like alpha males and TikTok or like whatever. I think it's pretty extreme. I think that's why I give it a B. It's like, oh, it has like a really an air of superiority, although it's supposed to not be that, you know. And I know I'm biased because of the Sigma males on TikTok, but what I'm trying to say is that, okay, I think it's pretty respectable. You just want to live your life, but like without any desire whatsoever. You're just like a completely disciplined person and you're just focused on your goals. However, I think it's a little bit cold. Because I don't know, I like being passionate about stuff, and Stoicism actually, it doesn't ban it per se, but it says that even excitement or like positive feelings are also something that should be hindered. And I'm like, no man, you should probably just enjoy life however you want. But yeah, just because of the big strict guidelines, I would probably give this one a B. I don't know what you think.
I think it's a like a fair position. I don't think the emotions should be regulated like Stoics think, but rather that you should control your actions even if your emotions are extreme. I think it's a fair argument on self-control and thought, but it's not necessarily of, yes, I am disciplined, now I am calm, even after, I don't know, something absolutely horrible happens. I think something like B is fair, especially because we have the most base Aristotelianism coming eventually, and that one is does consider that you have to feel. You are not just a completely self-disciplined person, anyways. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so Stoicism goes right up in the B. This one's simple, and it generally states that concepts like moral values, knowledge, or meaning are correct relative to a standpoint, like an era, a culture, or even a person. It also states that all standpoints are equally valid. Basically, general relativism is a nothing burger that is criticized by most philosophers, and nobody wants to call themselves a relativist, but it still makes it a possible claim, though it doesn't really say much.
Or rather, I think it gets more interesting when you go a bit more, you go more specific, like ethical relativism. So in this case, the concept of ethics and morality, it argues that it's relative to a standpoint of culture. It says that all cultures' ethics and morals are equally valid, which is a quite a fair way to think. And there's many modern philosophers who kind of think this way, or like people like some views like planetarity, for example, argues, okay, so we should come to agreements. And I mean, no, actually, just go watch our video, please go. You can search about
Okay, yeah, we
Kantianism.
go way more in depth,
Yeah.
like in planetary and stuff. But like to give it a more general context, I'd say like I don't know, like racism. Like 60 years ago, it was normal, or let's not even go that far. If you see basically any media from the 2000s, they're like super fatphobic and homophobic. It's like, oh, you're gay or like something, and it's completely different now, right? Because it's offensive. But like back then, it was fine, and I don't think that's really good because as you said, it's like it's really hard to say whether somebody like 100 or 200 years ago was correct with the information they had at the time. Because for me, somebody that is has developed themselves in the 21st century, it's like, okay, racism is bad because for me it's stupid to put yourself above others just because of your skin color. Like, I don't know, if you explain it to me, that's just like, what the hell, man? It doesn't make any sense. But according to like relativism, it's like, nope, it's fine because back then it was fine. It's like, I don't know, man. It's kind of like, no. I think I would probably, yeah, give it a C just because of that. But
Yeah, I think relativism is there on a C tier because it's like it doesn't really tell you much. You can't really apply it that well. But when you apply it, like ethical relativism, like yeah, different cultures have different ways to think and to decide actions, uh, and that's quite fair. Of course, there should still be some universal uh, ethics, but of course, ethical relativism gives this leeway of you can act this way because it's a cultural practice to act this way, as long as it doesn't violate like universal rights or something. Then yeah, it makes sense. So ethical relativism, even though it doesn't say as much, I would give it either an A or a B tier. Honestly, I think that seems fair.
I think an A seems fair. But you have to be like really open-minded to this because what I'm trying to say is that maybe if we gave them like the choice, like, okay, you do not have to follow this religion, like, if you don't want to, duh, like, okay, sure. But if you're like, oh no, I can't because of my religion or whatever, it's like, okay, fine, so completely up to you, but you have the choice, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does make sense. Though it's of course not easy. I think usually people assume people have reconsidered like other religions or other ideas, but it's not
Yeah.
necessarily the case in every place because at some points, like some places just like some people just cannot change their religion, be it because of being shunned by the by others and stuff. So I think something around a B is should be fine for ethical relativism because it's not as practical as you would hope to.
Yeah, I think a B is fine. We can put relativism on a C and ethical relativism on the B.
So, cynicism, basically, this one just says you should live according to your nature rather than the conventions that exist, and we should accept what we have and know what we want. So, as an unconventional and oppositional way to think, it was very much like, okay, yeah, I would just say it was shut down by a lot of philosophers in the past, and cynics themselves wouldn't like us describing it as a convention or as a uh, literally describing cynicism because it's not meant to be act by this convention.
Yeah, so I wrote the little description for this one, and I think that this way of thinking is pretty much it's pretty brave because like going against the current, like, yeah, that's pretty brave. But following this to an extreme, I think it can be like lazy or just easy because what if you're just like existing? I don't know, like maybe I don't know, I'm this crazy guy who just goes punching around people. That's just because that's what my nature tells me to do or whatever. Or I'm just unemployed or leeching off of people and just living off of like I don't know, like I scam somebody and I'm like, oh, that's just the way it is, man. It's just nature. I need to make a living somehow, and I don't want to go to work because it's a convention. What I'm trying to say is that to an extreme, you can just be like actively harming other people, and it's kind of like a mask. So if you're like an extreme cynic, according to like this definition, you're just like, well, I'm happy with my weird, happy life, I guess. So I'm a cynic, so that's okay.
I think it's more talking about conventions, like not necessarily aligning to conventions unless you really agree with them or agree with if you don't align to conventions, then you will be treated this way. And that's what it says by you have to accept that if you act this way, you will like this will most likely happen. So I think that's a fair way to think, but also if you misrepresent or kind of if you think you're a cynic but you're just happy with what you have and act like an asshole all the time, then you're not really that much of a cynic, you just kind of suck.
You're just
and
being an
yeah,
asshole. Yeah.
and saying, "This is my nature. I am poop." So that's just like not it. Though it can fall technically under
Yeah.
cynicism. So I think
So I guess it's extreme.
yeah.
I guess it's extreme cynicism. That's the way I describe it, because otherwise, what you said about like conventions, yeah, totally agree with you, and I would probably give it a B.
Yeah, B is fair because of the like I think it can be easily misrepresented honestly. So
Yeah.
anyways, this philosophy states that the purpose of humans is to act virtuously, but acting virtuously is simply the true nature of humans. So kind of your purpose is to act as a human, which is interesting. So it says that being virtuous requires a balance between enjoying the physical pleasures without being dependent on them. Aristotelianism says that having this balance requires habit, but habits aren't enough to be virtuous, they're just positive, and we need to be conscious of our actions without depending on them to act. So, for example, imagine you're a human and you have a cake and you're like, oh, I'm gonna consume this cake, or a piece of cake, and then you have a friend coming over at night. Well, the glutton will be like, I will consume it before my friend comes because
I need
I
it.
need it.
I need it.
It's literally a habit ingrained in them to just consume the thing because they haven't been taught otherwise. And someone who is virtuous um, would just consume like I don't know 3/4 or consume however much they want, but share parts of the pleasure with their friends because not only do they get the satisfaction of eating the cake itself, they also get the satisfaction of having a friend consume the cake with them and also talking with a friend who's happy about sharing the cake. So it will be a better interaction, I believe. So now he then says that guidance, like our guidance to see what is virtuous, is usually based on beauty. So basically, um, like, oh, the act of sharing is beautiful innately for most humans, but like that just means that's what guides your action. And yeah, I think it now going for what I think it's quite it's very good for an old philosophy because it's like yeah, children are not virtuous necessarily because they depend on like just on immediate what they need at the moment, food
Satisfaction.
or something. Eventually, their parents teach them, okay, you need to act this way. And then once you grow even older, you can choose when to, like, how to find a balance between these. And that's the part that requires both thought, but also knowing both yourself and what's
Like
yours.
kind of like self-control, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. It's kind of like a phased mix between cynicism and hedonism. It's just like a step beyond both of them, because like yeah, you should totally enjoy the pleasures in life, even if they're like conventional or whatever. We still consume really a lot of junk food. Um, but like yeah, like we're fine with it as long as it's not like an addiction. We're like, I need my chips or like
yeah.
something like that. But yeah, like that's not the case. Yeah, I agree with this being an A. I think it's pretty. I think it's really good. Hedonism is the desire to maximize pleasure and minimize pain above everything else. It has several branches, such as quantitative hedonism, which prioritizes the time and amount of pleasure, and qualitative, which looks for pleasure of a higher quality. The one's just like, I need pleasure now. Just like the mouse like will press a lever for the rest of their life just for a little hit of dopamine. But the more recent ones, which are a little slightly better, for me, tells you that you need to have it like it actually has to be good. So like brain rotting all day in bed, getting dopamine hits is not good hedonism. If that makes sense. I think that there's nothing inherently wrong with this, since who wouldn't want to be happy like all the time, like duh, right? But taken to the extreme, doing absolutely nothing but pursue pleasure can be just boring. I feel like it just comes easy. Like there's no reward on it. I feel like it doesn't feel earned,
Oh,
you know?
I get the idea, really, because I
Yeah.
was just gonna comment about how many philosophers and many studies kind of see a negative correlation between both meaning and happiness. It's interesting if you think
Mhm.
about it, but basically is you're happy all the time or frequently, then you cannot really like you're just happy all the time. There's not much meaning in your life because everything you've done just doesn't come at a cost, or you didn't put as much, like there wasn't struggle to get where you are, so there's not really something that gives you a decent comparison. In general, I mean, the old hedonism kind of sucks, honestly. Let's just I think that one's just like, yeah, doom
I
scrolling
think
is
it's a
good,
straight D.
like, basically.
I think it's just a straight D. It's not that great.
Yeah.
And I'm not even gonna take into consideration like the new ones. I'm just like the idea of just like being on pleasure like all the time. Imagining that we're just like plugged into an VR machine where you're just like plugged in pleasure all the time. Like, I mean, I understand why anybody would like go ahead and choose it, but it's just not for me. Just not
Yeah.
not it. I don't blame anybody, but it sucks. You know, like I'm still gonna judge you. I don't blame you, but I'm still gonna judge you. You know.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
hedonism sucks. Egalitarianism is okay. We deserve to treat everyone equally, but it also doesn't really pinpoints what equality is because it's broad. No shit, and it doesn't have any actionable steps to achieve it because you don't even know what equality is. I think its broadness makes it quite impractical and hard to define, and most people think equality is good without considering what part they're even talking about. So we will give it a C because it's broad and because it's obvious without really giving any guidance, since most people think equality is good. So egalitarianism just by itself, kind of a C, I think is fair. Or
Yeah, it's just like a child's, or not really like a child, an empathetic child way of thinking, which is just like, yeah, everybody deserves the same without taking into account like the ramifications that don't make sense, or not like the ramifications it could take you into, which is why Rawls take on equality of opportunity is one of the best we can take. So go ahead and
yes.
explain it.
So a branch of egalitarianism, or rather an egalitarian philosopher, was Rawls, and he argued for equality of opportunity. That was the most important that he thinks, and he divided it into formal equality of opportunity and fair equality of opportunity. So when we go in this case, now we define equality as equality of opportunity instead of just equality. Then formal equality of opportunity is just meritocracy, which is, I mean, it will be fair, like it will be a good system if it worked in the first place, which is why Rawls developed fair equality of opportunity. So that one is like there's barriers to meritocracy that we need to address so that we can live in meritocracy. So in that sense,
Yeah.
It says education, well, people who are rich tend to get better education, and if you pay for things, you usually, like, if you are rich, you don't really need to work to go to a good school. As in, for example, many people, even with scholarships and stuff, they still need to pay the school, which requires more effort on their part, or even working part-time. In that sense, it addresses that you need to cover these things so that you can go to meritocracy, which we explained in the other video. But yeah, in that sense, it's talking about how to become a society that becomes fair so that we can have meritocracy. And the way to do that, he gives a lot of actions. But for example, affirmative action is one way, like bridging those gaps. And once those gaps are bridged, just go to meritocracy, because that way, like, there's no longer the systematic injustice. So
yeah.
But when the last thing I'm gonna talk about is that when it becomes very, like, it doesn't work when you go to extremes, or at least not with most moral values, because it's like Rawls argues that so that you can have fair equality of opportunity, you might need to remove family from the picture, which it does makes sense if you think about equality of opportunity being the only thing to achieve. But this one is like, I don't know, it's like,
Yeah, it's kind of sus. Yeah, it's kind of sus.
but yeah, anyways, that's all. I think A, because it's great. But
Oh yeah, yeah. I
that
think
okay.
Egalitarianism gets a C and Rawls gets an A. Woo! So that's our tier list. Again, we'll be more than happy to fight you in the comments. Just don't be too rude about it, I guess. And yeah, go check out our other videos, like, subscribe, all that jumble, and we'll be seeing you on the next part, which should be uploaded on the 30th, and then the next part on the 10th of February. So yeah, we'll see you then.